May here, and thank you for joining me for another video. I wanted to come on today because I have had a wonderful experience where so many people are asking me more about my tradition, and I'm so happy to share, and my guides are so happy that everyone is so interested in learning about my tradition. At least I like to share from my perspective and my lineage, what I was taught, because I can't speak for other lineages of the Dominican Republic or from other traditions, but I can speak on mine. So this is a video. It's going to be discussing a little bit of a brief summary of the history of how the 21 division came to be from around the 1300s to now, to how it actually developed to what it is now. So this is an answer to a question that someone asked me via email. Thank you for your questions, and please, if you ever have a question, please go ahead and write it to me, and if I have time to respond, I definitely will respond to you. If not, I will do it in a video as well. For this case, I did respond in an email to the person who asked me. However, I wanted to make it available to the masses as well, so I wanted to make sure that I put it on the channel so everyone could see it and hear about it and get excited. So the question was, basically how did the 21 division develop? And the 21 existential divisions is really what it's called in my lineage. And why is there so much influence from other traditions, such as like Santeria and Sanse, and there's some influence also from Babalaos and from Paleros and from some Vodou as well, some Vodou influence. So I wanted to explain why that is and how that happened. So the best place I can really start is in the 1300s, before Columbus even got to the island. First of all, like I said before, the 21 existential divisions of beings of light, which is what we call it in my lineage and what it is in Dominican Republic, it isn't a tradition that was born in a very unique way. Why? Because the Dominican Republic, that as it is called now, before it was called the Hispaniola, before that was called La Quisqueya, which was what the indigenous people called it. It's a very unique place because it was kind of like the first melting pot in the Americas after the explorers from Spain came to this side of the world. And the first, many people may remember from history class that Columbus first landed in the island known as La Quisqueya and in the Caribbean, where he first encountered the indigenous people known as the Tainos, primarily the tribe of the Arawak, which welcomed him with open arms and gave him gifts and gave his companions gifts as well. And this is, 1400s, late 1400s. Now, if we go a little bit back, in the 1300s, as far as we can actually trace it back, there is much more history before that about what was in La Quisqueya. La Quisqueya is an island that now shares Haiti and Dominican Republic. So Haiti developed a different set of traditions, and Dominican Republic developed a different set of traditions as they got further and further away from now what is known as Haiti. The Quisqueya in the 1300s was inhabited by the indigenous people. Some people might call them Native Americans, known as the Tainos, and they also are known very widely as the Arawak Nation. Okay, so that was in the 1300s. Now that is where the Indians from the 21 division, the set of Indians, potencias, come from, and this includes like Anacaona, El Indio Gaunavo, and those kinds of beings, and El Gran Toro del Monte, and those beings. So they were actually warriors, or Anacaona, for example, she was actually the chief. One of the chiefs of the island. She was basically a princess when Columbus first got there. Then she became a chief as her elders passed away, and she really had to defend her island along with her then future husband, El Indio Caunabo. So when Columbus comes to the island, he brings with him Spaniards, he brings with him Spaniard influence, he brings with him the Spaniard tradition, the Spaniard culture, the Spaniard religion, which was the Catholic religion of the time. If many of you can look back in history, and you can see that back then you had very Catholic leaders in Spain, very Catholic king and queen who endorsed for Columbus to make this trip to the Americas, thinking that they were going to India. So that's where the term Indian comes from, because when Columbus landed on the Quisqueya, he looked at the people and he saw the darker skin, the little indigenous skin, and he thought that if he went around the world that he was going to hit India so that he could get spices cheaper and kind of beat other sailors and other merchants. And he ended up in La Quisqueya. He ended up meeting the Indians, which were the indigenous people of the time of the Arawak Nation. And he calls them Indians. At first, they have a great meeting. They are very friendly to each other. But however, over time, unfortunately, the Spaniards got a little greedy as they saw that the indigenous people wore gold as if it was as if it was a quartz crystal, and it didn't really mean much to them. Actually, back then, the quartz crystal probably meant more to the indigenous people because of its ancestral connections and its connection to the earth. And the gold was also valuable, but to them, it was more of a way to honor their ancestors. So, as the Spaniards got a little greedy, of course, they started to colonize the island. And then we had the influence that's how we developed the Spaniard influence. So of course through forced relationships, and sometimes through marriage between the Spaniards and the indigenous people, then that's how we started the mixture of the Spaniard blood and the indigenous blood. So that started around the 1500s. Let's move past that a few years. The Spaniards and other usually mostly the Spaniards start to take people from Africa, and that is how the African influence is started. So we start bringing slaves over, people as slaves over from Africa to the Americas to work the sugarcane plantations and all those kinds of things that are now sprouting out in the Americas. At this point now, it is no longer La Quisqueya, it is now La Hispaniola, and at some point, Haiti, at some point they pushed most of the slaves over to Haiti, which is now present-day Haiti, to the other side of the island, which is less fruitful. The Hispaniola keeps the Hispaniola, and it's one island at this point. Later on becomes the separation between Haiti and Dominican Republic. The Haitians receiving the lesser rich land, from what I understand, and the Dominicans taking the more fertile land, from what I understand. Now keep in mind, I'm not a historian. This is just what I was given by my guides and my ancestors. Okay. So at this point now, the African influence is brought in. Now the Spaniard and indigenous are starting to mix their blood with the African. So that's how Dominicans became Hispanic, and we became, being indigenous, after we were indigenous, we became Hispanic, and we became African. So I have indigenous blood, I have Spaniard blood, and I have African blood. My grandfather is half African, half indigenous, and my grandmother is Spaniard. So that's how I have the three lineages, okay? Then, when this starts to happen, at this point, you have to probably understand that there are some hurt feelings, and some of the indigenous people are hurt because so much of their people were wiped out. And then you have the Africans that were brought here against their will, and maybe some of them came willingly, but most of them came against their will. And then you have the Spaniards there, which are kind of ruling the whole thing, right? So then the Africans have to find a way to be able to honor their deities without feeling unsafe from the Spaniard influence. So they take on some of the Catholic saints, and they convert their deities into Catholic saints, okay? So Similar thing happens to the indigenous people as well. However, at this point, we're about the 1700s, which is the late 1700s is as far back as I can trace back my lineage for the 21 Division. And that was my great-great-great-great-grandmother that started. From what I understand, there were actually 21 families that were chosen to carry on this lineage. So the 21 Division began as a way to keep peace between the three different traditions, cultures, ethnicities, races, whatever you want to call it, which were the Spaniards, which came from Europe, the Africans from Africa, and the indigenous people that were their home was that island of first Quisqueya, then La Hispaniola, and now known as the Dominican Republic, which is why Dominican Republic is so unique. There are 21 different, as far as I understand, there are 21 different lineages of the 21 existential divisions in the Dominican Republic, and that's why some of them are a little different. Some of them have more indigenous influence. So the indigenous influence gave us what we know as root work, palería. So palería is root work. It's working the roots to speak to your ancestors, or to honor your ancestors, or to do baths to cleanse yourself, or to influence something to happen for you. The Africans also brought us some traditions of magic, okay, or their version of magic, which is the works and those kinds of things that they were able to do, like the honey jars and the sweet jars and the hexes and things like that. So that came from the Africans. And then the Spaniards gave us the saints, which were really a way to represent, for the Africans and the indigenous to represent their deities. And they gave us the saints, which are very similar to the orishas from Santeria. And, but the great thing about it is that because of that, a council of 21 beings was created, each represented by 7 beings, either of the white saints, the African saints, or the indigenous Indian saints, or potencias, because that's really what you would call them. And each one got 7 main representatives in the council, where they would discuss how to keep the peace amongst the people so that they would stop fighting amongst each other, because at this point we all had the same blood. We were all mixed, so they no longer wanted us to fight over just religion or culture or tradition. So in this case, the leaders, the divine had to intervene and help us come together. Okay, so that's how the 21 Division started. Now this is in the 1800s. It began as a tradition that was very mixed. So you will see some Santeria influence. You will see some Palero influence. You will see some Vodou influence from Africa. So you will see that in the Dominican Republic, because it is such a unique situation thanks to the Spaniards colonizing the island and kind of taking over and bringing other influences from Africa and those things. So that's how our mixture began. That's why my tradition is so versatile, and it's so it's just constantly evolving, because we are able to receive messages from the indigenous and from the Africans and from the white saints, and on how they want us to run our lives, and how we can better our lives. So they don't run our lives for us, they just help us run our lives. And what's amazing too about the 21 Division is that other beings from other traditions, like the orishas, can actually approach a baptized priest or high priestess of the 21 Division and ask that they work with us, because they have to choose us. So for me, for example, I've had a few, I'm not going to say who, I've had a few orishas the last couple of weeks that have asked me to work with me, that have asked me to serve them, and I have welcomed them, because I will welcome the spirits that come to me that are of love and light and that want to work with me, because that's an honor. So you will see that mixture because the 21 division is a unique situation. And then that tradition for those 21 families was passed down from generation to generation. At least in my family, it has been for 7 generations. My brother and I are both baptized, and my grandfather, my mom, all of that. And it just continues to grow, and I hope that I can pass it on to my children. And also, we are able to pass it on to those whom the Spirit choose. So if you want to become initiated, I usually tell people I don't just initiate anyone, because the Spirit has to choose you, and they choose you. So if you have questions on how to be initiated, you can contact me on my website. I do have an initiation interview if you're interested in the 21 division, or being a priest or priestess of the 21 division, or even being just a servant of theirs, because they will help you even if you're not initiated as a priest or priestess. But if you're going to be working with them on a deeper level, I would suggest initiation if they have chosen you. So that's my little spiel about history of the 21 existential divisions of this beings of light. This council created to keep peace between my Spaniard ancestors, my African ancestors, and my indigenous ancestors. I am so blessed to have this tradition. I am so happy to share it with the world. And remember, I am always available. As long as I'm not in a reading or doing some work for someone, please go ahead and email me at readingsbymay@gmail.com. You can contact me on my website, www.priestessmay.com. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.com/priestess_May and Facebook.com/priestessmay for more and more updates. So please stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe so you can get those notifications. Blessings, and may the angels and the saints and the guardians and ancestors be with you always. Blessings to you, and have a great day.